Let's take Delta, for example, because it's likely that Delta is on your radar screen if you're serious about going out of network, because they're usually the largest. So let's talk about Delta. And again, we cannot say, well, the co-payment for an adult hygiene appointment is going to be this with your Delta patients, because it all depends on the Delta group policy number. And here's what we've seen from one extreme to the other. On one extreme, and I'm going to emphasize this is an absolute outlier, there could be no co-payment when you go out of network. None. And then on the other end of the extreme, we've seen as high as $240 for a co-payment for the hygiene appointment. Big range, 0 to $240. On the zero side, very unusual. It's entirely possible that in your practice you wouldn't see any of those, but it is possible you could. And that would simply mean that the employer, whoever bought the policy, was willing to pay higher premiums to get a better plan. And that's what happened. It's more likely to be a private employer than a municipal employer. Likely not to be a school district, police department, fire department, state employee, city employee, federal employee. Much more likely to be a private employer where maybe they feel there's more pressure to attract and keep the best, the best workers. But I will emphasize that's unusual. Well, it's great news.
And the other reason might be they might offer significant discounts for these large employers with 100,000 employees, and they'll say, well, we'll do it, but here are the conditions. They can only go to these doctors, and if they go outside of these doctors, then they're going to pay a huge.
It'd be a dentist. They have to a dentist within the network. Any dentist
any within the network. But if they're not within the network, then they have to pay huge fees. And Google or the city which has 50,000 employees might say, okay, fine, I'll take that. Because I would rather get the millions of dollars in savings, for that restriction, versus small employees. They can't give them such a good deal that they would give these big guys. So they'll say, well, our standard plan that applies to everybody else applies to you, and therefore the copay may not be that much of a different.
So there's three so that outlier, the outlier of no copayment, you may not even encounter that. The next level up would be what I would categorize under a relatively low copayment. And relative is just that, it's relative. What is expensive to someone might not be expensive to someone else, so we have to factor that in. But what I'm categorizing as a relatively low copayment would be anything less than $50, less than 50. So we see 22, 26, 38, 44, up to 50. And I'm not saying a patient wouldn't leave you for a $50 copayment, or plug in whatever number I put in that lower category. Could a patient leave because of a $22 copayment? Could that happen?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, absolutely.
They could, but usually they don't.
We've seen many patients leave in our coaching work.